My husband left me to die alone in a hospital, signed the papers, and walked away laughing with the woman he replaced me with. He buried me in his mind that night. But 3 years later, I walked back into his life as the ruthless owner of his entire company, and I tore his world apart in front of every employee he once used to command. Before I tell you how I survived the death he wished on me and built the power he never saw coming, like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. I remember the sound before I remember the pain, the steady, cold hum of hospital machines, the kind that don't comfort you but warn you that you're alive just enough to suffer. My eyelids were too heavy to lift, like someone had glued them shut, and every time I tried to move my fingers, I felt nothing, not even the faint spark of a nerve. It was the first moment I realized I might actually be dying, and for a brief second, I accepted it. I thought, maybe this is how life ends, not in flames or chaos, but in the quiet drip of IV fluid and the echo of footsteps that never come close enough to touch you. But then I heard his voice. My husband, Daniel, the man I had loved for 16 years, the man I had trusted more than anyone on earth. He didn't sound afraid. He didn't sound broken. He didn't even sound tired. He sounded relieved. "Just sign it," he said, his voice low but not low enough. "She's not coming back. She wouldn't want to live like this." The doctor hesitated. "Mr. Hale, she still has brain activity. It's not impossible." I said, "Sign it," Daniel snapped, and something inside me, something barely awake, barely alive, felt itself rip open. I wanted to scream, but my throat was stone. I wanted to sit up, grab his wrist, force his eyes to look at mine and see the woman he had promised forever to. But all I could do was listen. And that was the curse. I heard every word, every sigh, every whisper he thought wouldn't matter because he believed I was already gone. He wasn't crying, he wasn't holding my hand, he wasn't begging for another chance at a miracle. He was signing the authorization to end my life support. I could hear the scratch of the pen, the exhale of finality, and then her voice, soft, sweet, poison. "It's better this way, Danny." Lily, his assistant, 28 years old, perfect skin, perfect smile, the woman I had suspected for months but never dared confront because I thought Daniel was stressed, not cruel. I never imagined he was the kind of man who would cheat on a wife battling a stress-induced collapse. And I never, ever imagined he would leave that wife to die. "Once she's gone, we don't have to hide anymore," Lily whispered. "We can finally live." Live. The word burned. They were planning a life over my dying body. Daniel murmured something I couldn't hear, but Lily laughed, soft and satisfied, the sound of a woman who believed she had won. And Daniel, my husband, laughed with her. That was the moment I realized I wasn't dying from the illness. I was dying from betrayal, the kind that doesn't heal cleanly, the kind that rots you from the inside out. I don't know how long they stayed. Time didn't move normally in that room. It ran in circles, like an animal pacing before slaughter. At some point, the doctor said he would prepare the final steps, and I felt everything inside me tighten into one screaming thought. No, not like this. I didn't know how, but I knew I had to live. Not for love, not for hope, but for revenge, for survival, for the right to look Daniel in the eyes one day and let him see the face of the woman he abandoned. Hours passed, maybe days. Nurses moved around me, voices blending into a fog. But no one touched the machines, no one pulled the plug, no one dimmed the monitors. I didn't know why until I heard him again. Daniel. He wasn't alone this time either. But this time, he sounded angry. "What do you mean I can't do it yet?" he snapped. "You said I could make the decision." The doctor's voice was calm but firm. "Her vitals are improving. We need to run another set of scans." Daniel swore under his breath. "Just let her go already. Let her go." That was all my life was to him. A paperwork inconvenience, a loose end, something to clean up. He left that day with Lily, slamming the door behind him, like visiting my unconscious body had been a chore. That was when the world around me quieted, just long enough for a single hand warm, careful to wrap around mine. A nurse, not like the others. Her voice was soft but sharp with certainty. "I know you're still in there," she whispered. Your eyes moved when he spoke. If I could have sobbed, I would have. "Someone finally saw me. Someone new." "Fight," she whispered. If you can hear me, fight. And for the first time, I tried. I sank my focus into the smallest muscle I could feel, the twitch beneath my right eye. It wasn't much. It wasn't even visible to most. But she saw it. "There you go," she breathed. "You're not done." And in that second, I wasn't a dying woman. I wasn't a discarded wife. I wasn't a body waiting for a signature. I was a storm waking up. A storm that would take 3 years to rise. A storm that would one day walk into Daniel's company, the company he built, the company he worshipped, and destroy him from the inside out. But in that moment, all I had was pain, betrayal, and the faintest spark of life. And that was enough. It had to be. Because the man I loved had made one fatal mistake. He left me alive long enough to hear everything. The nurse's name was Mara, though I didn't learn that until much later. In the beginning, she was just the voice that cut through the fog and reminded me I wasn't gone yet. Every time Daniel visited and spat his casual cruelty into the air, she hovered nearby, watching him the way a wolf watches a trespasser. I could hear it in her breathing, in the way her gloved hands tightened when he talked about moving on, about not dragging this out. She knew something was wrong with him long before anyone else did. Days blurred into one another, but I always knew when he was near. My heart monitors betrayed me every single time. Flat, calm lines turned jagged the moment his footsteps hit the floor. Mara noticed that too. "He stresses you," she whispered one night as she adjusted my fore. "Or scares you." I couldn't respond, but the silence answered for me. She exhaled slowly, and her fingers brushed my wrist. "I'll stay until he leaves next time." That promise became the only anchor I had in a world where my body refused to obey me. Daniel came less frequently, which should have comforted me, but instead it terrified me. He wasn't avoiding me because he felt guilty. He was avoiding me because he thought the results would finally give him what he wanted, a legal path to get rid of me. And every time he did show up, he brought Lily. The first time she walked in wearing his jacket, I thought I would flatline out of rage. She leaned against the wall like she owned the room, whispering into his ear, pressing kisses to his neck while he stood beside my bed signing insurance paperwork. At one point, she even brushed her fingers over the blanket covering my legs and whispered, "I hope you go peacefully. We really need things to settle soon." That was the closest I had ever felt to breaking. If my body had allowed it, I would have ripped the ventilator out of my throat and lunged at her. But I stayed silent, trapped inside the coffin of my mind, listening to the woman who replaced me plan the life she would build on top of my grave. The next morning, Mara came in with a different energy, sharp, urgent. "Listen," she whispered, leaning close. "I requested your neurologist personally. Something's off. Your scans don't match what they're telling your husband." Something inside me tightened. They were lying, or he was. "Your brain activity is far from the pattern of someone who's gone," she continued. "You respond to sounds. You react to voices. I've documented everything." I wanted to scream in relief, but she wasn't done. "I overheard him in the hallway," she said quietly. "Your husband. He told someone on the phone that he just needs the doctor to sign off and that you should have died already. If I could have shivered, I would have." So it wasn't just carelessness or indifference. He wanted me dead. He was waiting for the moment he could legally end me. Mara paused as if choosing her next words carefully. "I don't think this was an accident," she whispered, the kind of whisper that sinks into your bones and stays there. "Your injuries, they're consistent with a sudden loss of control, but the paramedics noted that nothing else on your car malfunctioned, and you were alone when it happened. It just doesn't add up." I remembered the crash, the foggy sky, the sudden jolt, the steering wheel jerking violently. The moment everything snapped, I'd blamed myself. Stress, exhaustion, a moment of carelessness. But now, hearing Mara say it, the memory tightened into something sharp and cold. Did Daniel do this? If I could have moved even a muscle, my entire body would have convulsed. Mara didn't press further. She squeezed my hand gently before stepping away. "If you can hear me," she whispered, "you're going to need to stay alive long enough to tell someone the truth." Staying alive was easier said than done. My lungs stuttered. My mind flickered. There were nights when I drifted so far into the dark that I thought maybe Daniel had been right. Maybe dying would have been easier. But every time the darkness tried to pull me under, a single image dragged me back. Daniel's hand signing the document to end my life. That hand would be the first thing I destroyed when I got out of here. The next week was a war between hope and despair. Daniel visited twice. Both times he asked the doctor, "How much longer until we can finalize things?" Finalize things. Like he was waiting for a package delivery, not the death of his wife. Lily clung to him, whispering plans, vacations, apartments, a future that sickened me so much my vitals spiked. Mara used that as evidence. The neurologist reviewed her notes and ordered another set of scans. Daniel wasn't told. That was the first sign the staff no longer trusted him. The second was when security began standing at the end of the hallway during his visits. He didn't notice. Narcissists rarely do. Then came the night everything changed. Mara entered my room long after visiting hours, her expression tight with urgency. "We're going to test something," she whispered. "Just you and me. If I'm right, we can prove you're conscious." She held up a flashlight and positioned it so I could see the faint blur of light through my eyelids. "When I say now, I want you to focus everything you have on moving your right eye, even a twitch, even a flicker." I gathered myself, gathered the pieces of myself I barely had left. "Now," she whispered. Something inside me snapped forward, some buried instinct that refused to die, and my eyelid jerked. Just once. Just enough. But Mara gasped sharply. "There it is," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You're in there. I knew it." Relief washed over me so powerfully I could have drowned in it. She grabbed my chart, scribbling frantically. "This changes everything. You're no longer a candidate for life support withdrawal." I wanted to sob. She leaned close, her voice dark and shaking. "He can't touch you now. Daniel loses his power the moment I show this to the neurologist." She straightened, her breath trembling. "And after that, we're going to find out exactly what he did to you." That was the night I truly came back to life. Not because my body healed, not because the machines stabilized, but because I realized something with icy clarity. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing. Preparing for the day I would rise from this hospital bed, walk into Daniel's perfect little world, and rip it open from the inside out. And I would start by taking away the thing he loved more than any human being: his company. The empire he built on lies, ambition, and the belief that I would never return. He had no idea I was counting down the days until I owned every piece of his future. The morning after Mara confirmed my responsiveness, the world inside that hospital shifted in ways Daniel never anticipated. I could feel it not through movement, because my body still refused to obey me, but through the energy of the room, the urgency in footsteps, the hushed tone of the staff who suddenly treated me like someone present, not someone fading. I sensed a storm brewing, but for once, it wasn't mine. It was theirs. The doctors, the nurses, the people who had unknowingly been witnesses to the cruelty I endured. They were finally starting to see it. My neurologist entered my room just before sunrise, his voice low, his footsteps careful, as if he knew any sudden noise could pull me back into panic. He spoke gently as he shined a light across my eyes, but this time, when he asked me to follow it, I could feel my gaze shift, slow, clumsy, but intentional. "There it is," he muttered, awe creeping into his tone. "This is conscious tracking. We misdiagnosed her." He wasn't ashamed. He wasn't defensive. He sounded relieved, like he'd stumbled onto a small miracle in the middle of a nightmare. Mara stood behind him, arms crossed, jaw tight, guarding me as if Daniel himself might burst through the door at any moment. "So she's stable?" Mara asked. Though it wasn't a question, it was a challenge. "More than stable," the neurologist replied. "She's improving, and more importantly, she's aware." The weight of those words settled over the room like a protective shield. Aware, conscious, alive. 3 words that removed Daniel's legal right to kill me. 3 words that turned the man I married into a man the hospital now viewed with suspicion. But the neurologist wasn't finished. "I'm filing an immediate report with the ethics board," he said, "and notifying administration. Her husband no longer has authority to request withdrawal. This is now a neurological recovery case." Mara looked down at me, her eyes fierce. "You hear that? He can't touch you." If I could have smiled, I would have. If I could have laughed, I would have shaken the walls. But the victory was brief, because I knew Daniel would learn about this soon, and when he did, he wouldn't accept it quietly. He never accepted losing, especially not when losing meant losing control over me. The hospital called him that afternoon. I couldn't hear the exact words, but I recognized the tone, polite, professional, just vague enough to be infuriating. They didn't tell him about my improvement. They only told him he needed to come in to discuss changes to the plan. I felt it like an incoming earthquake. Daniel's rage, his panic, his desperation to stop a future he didn't want to unfold. Mara stayed by my side through the call, her gaze fixed on my heartbeat monitor, watching the numbers spike the moment they said his name. "You're safe," she whispered, placing a calming hand on my shoulder. "He can't do anything without a doctor's signature now, and he won't get one." Safe wasn't the word I would have chosen. Safe wasn't what I felt when I heard his footsteps echoing down the hall later, sharp and fast like a blade scraping the floor. He entered with the same arrogance he always carried, but this time there was something else beneath it. Fear. Not fear for me. Fear for himself. "Why was I called here?" he demanded, not even glancing in my direction. "I thought we already agreed on next steps." The neurologist stood firm. "Mr. Hale, there's been a development in your wife's condition." Daniel stiffened. "What kind of development?" "She's showing clear signs of neurological responsiveness. We have documented evidence that she's conscious." The room went silent, so silent I could hear the shift in Daniel's breathing. He wasn't surprised. That was the chilling part. He wasn't shocked that I was conscious. He was shocked he'd been caught. "That's impossible," he muttered quickly. She can't. She hasn't." "She has," the neurologist said calmly. "It's undeniable. She's responding to commands. She follows light." We observed voluntary eye movement. Daniel stared at my face now, but not with love, not with relief. He stared the way a man stares at a match he thought he had extinguished, only to realize the flame never died. "So what does this mean?" he asked, his voice tight. "It means," the neurologist replied, "you no longer have the authority to make decisions about ending her care. She is a conscious patient. She is now under neurological recovery protocol." Daniel swallowed, jaw clenching. "How long until she wakes up fully?" "That's impossible to know," the doctor said. "Could be weeks, could be longer. But the trajectory is promising." Daniel stepped closer, leaning over me, searching for something in my face. Fear, helplessness, compliance. But he found none of those things, because even though I couldn't move, I was no longer powerless. I was gathering myself, piece by piece, preparing for him. He leaned in slightly, his breath warm and sour as he whispered, "If you can hear me, remember none of this changes anything. You're still mine." Mara stepped between us so fast he flinched. "Back up," she snapped. "There are cameras in this room, Mr. Hale." Daniel's eyes hardened. "I was talking to my wife." "And I'm talking to you," she replied. "You don't get to intimidate a recovering patient." For a moment, I thought he might lash out, but instead, he straightened, smoothing the sleeves of his shirt like he needed something to control. "Fine," he said quietly, "but I want regular updates." The neurologist nodded stiffly. "Of course, but from now on, those updates will be documented." Daniel left without another word, his footsteps echoing like a threat thrown over his shoulder. When the door finally closed, Mara leaned over me again and whispered, "He's scared of you. Remember that." And he should be. Later that night, alone in the dim hospital room, I replayed his expression in my mind, the shock, the anger, the subtle dread. For the first time since the crash, I tasted something other than fear, not hope, not relief. Power. Power over the man who tried to erase me. Power over the future he thought I'd never see. Power that would one day allow me to walk into his world and take everything from him the way he tried to take everything from me. And as the machines hummed beside me, I made myself a silent promise. When I rise from this bed, I won't just reclaim my life, I'll reclaim his too. The day after Daniel learned the truth about my consciousness, something in the hospital atmosphere changed. Staff members who once moved around me mechanically now walked with purpose. Conversations dropped into silence whenever Daniel's name was mentioned. Security lingered near the elevators during visiting hours, and Mara guarded me like a lioness. She barely left my room unless required to, and whenever she did, she made another nurse sit in the chair beside my bed, so I was never alone and never vulnerable. Daniel didn't return for 3 days. 3 days in which I let fear twist into something sharper, something stronger. I didn't want to hide from him anymore. I wanted him to see me, to feel the weight of my survival press against his chest like a tightening rope. On the 4th day, he finally appeared. Not alone. Lily at his side, her arm linked through his as if she belonged in my space, as if she had a right to the air I breathed. They walked in laughing softly about something, and then both froze when they saw Mara sitting directly beside me, arms crossed, eyes burning with warning. "Can we have some privacy?" Daniel asked, his voice tense, trying to maintain the illusion of control. "No," Mara said, without hesitation. "All interactions with Mrs. Hale are supervised." His jaw tightened. "Why?" "Hospital policy," Mara lied coolly. "Conscious neurological patients require monitored visits." Daniel scoffed. "She is barely conscious." Mara smiled without warmth. "Then you should have no problem visiting her with me here." Lily squeezed his arm, whispering something I couldn't hear. He leaned down over me, lowering his voice, masking his tone with fake softness. "I'm glad you're showing progress," he said, but there was nothing glad in his eyes, only calculation. "This will make things easier." Easier. For him. Always for him. He thought if I recovered, he could spin the story, gaslight the truth into something that favored him. I felt my pulse spike on the monitor. Mara leaned forward. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" she asked. I blinked once, slow and deliberate. Daniel noticed. For the first time since the accident, I watched true fear flicker across his face. Not guilt. Fear. The fear of a man being watched by the very ghost he thought he buried. Lily's eyes widened. Did she just blink on purpose?" "She can hear us," Mara said sharply. "So choose your words wisely." "That's ridiculous," Daniel snapped. "She's just reacting to light." "There is no light," Mara said. "She blinked at your voice." Silence dropped over the room like shattered glass. Mara stood. "Visiting time is over." Daniel turned to her. "No, it isn't." "Yes," Mara said coldly. "It is. Leave." Lily tugged his sleeve, urging him toward the door, but he stared at me a moment longer, searching my face, looking for something. Recognition, fear, weakness, anything he could use. He found nothing. I was no longer a victim lying helpless in a bed. I was a witness. And witnesses are dangerous. When they finally left, Mara exhaled shakily and sat back down. "He's going to try something," she murmured. "Men like him don't lose quietly." I knew she was right. Daniel's entire world revolved around dominance, financial dominance, emotional dominance, narrative dominance. The moment he realized he couldn't control me, he would look for another way to control the outcome. I didn't have to wait long to learn what his next move would be. That night, a different doctor entered my room. Not my neurologist, a man I had only seen briefly once before. His eyes were tired, his face strained, and when he approached my bed, Mara stepped in front of him instantly. "State your purpose," she demanded. "I'm here to evaluate the patient for transition options," he said. Mara stiffened. "Transition to what?" "Long-term residential care," he replied. "Per the husband's request." My pulse hammered. Daniel was trying to move me, far away, out of reach, somewhere he could hide me, bury me, control the narrative, control everything. Mara glared at the doctor. Her husband no longer has that authority. The doctor sighed. "He's filing to contest that. I'm required to perform this evaluation until administration halts the request." Administration. The ethics board. Daniel was trying to worm his way around them before they officially removed his decision-making powers. Mara stepped closer. "You touch her, and I file a report citing obstruction of neurological recovery protocol." The doctor hesitated. "Mara, listen, if the paperwork is pending." "Pending isn't approved," she snapped. "Get out." He left, flustered, and Mara turned to me, fury blazing in her eyes. "He's desperate," she whispered, "and desperate men do stupid things." That night, she didn't sleep. She sat in the chair beside me, arms crossed, face angled toward the door like she was waiting for a threat to climb through it. I would have thanked her if I could speak, but instead all I could do was blink. She understood. "I won't let him move you," she murmured. "Not after everything he's done." The next morning, the neurologist arrived with urgent news. "The ethics board fast-tracked your case," he said, flipping through paperwork. "Your husband no longer has any authority. He was notified an hour ago." Mara grinned, a slow, satisfied smile. "He's going to lose his mind." I imagined the moment Daniel received that call, the moment he realized he had lost the last tool he had to erase me. And for the first time since the accident, I felt something new blooming inside me, not fear, not pain, but anticipation. The first seed of my revenge, the first step toward reclaiming my life, and, eventually, taking his. Daniel didn't come to the hospital the day the ethics board stripped his authority, or the day after, or the one after that. But his silence wasn't comfort, it was a warning. A man like him doesn't retreat, he reloads. I sensed it like a storm hovering behind glass, waiting for the smallest crack to break through. Mara sensed it too. Her shoulders were always tight now, her gaze cutting toward every doorway before stepping through it, her hand lingering on my chart longer than necessary. She had become my shield long before I understood how far she was willing to go. On the fourth day after the ruling, something changed. Not because Daniel appeared, but because someone else did. A woman, older than me by at least 20 years, perfectly tailored suit, hard eyes that scanned the room like she was evaluating assets, not patients. "Mrs. Hale?" she said without emotion, as if expecting me to answer. Mara stepped between us. "Who are you?" The woman didn't flinch. "I'm Attorney Morgan, representative for Mr. Hale." My heart monitor spiked so violently Mara cursed under her breath. The attorney glanced at the monitor, unimpressed. "I'm here to give notice," she continued. "Mr. Hale is contesting the ethics board ruling." Mara laughed once, sharp and cold. "Of course he is. A man like him can't let go of control without clawing through everyone in his way." The attorney's jaw tightened. "Regardless of your personal opinion, he has the legal right to pursue appeal. He also intends to file for emergency relocation to a long-term care facility." My pulse skyrocketed. He was still trying to hide me. Mara took a step closer, voice lowering into a growl. "She is improving. She is communicative. She is conscious. A relocation would be medical malpractice." "We'll see what the court decides," Attorney Morgan said without blinking. "As of now, I'm required to notify you that Mr. Hale demands no further medical decisions be made without his legal representation present." Mara crossed her arms. "His demands are irrelevant. He no longer has authority here." The attorney's eyes flicked to me again briefly, cold, assessing, calculating something I couldn't hear. "Then this will be handled in court," she said. "Expect filings this week." When she left, Mara let out a slow, simmering breath. "He's not stopping," she muttered. "Not until he gets what he wants." What he wanted was obvious. For me to disappear before I could expose him, before I could ruin him, before I could rise from this bed and show the world the truth. The hospital administration met that evening. It didn't involve me directly, but I heard the aftermath, the hushed conversations between nurses, the cautious footsteps of staff suddenly more protective. Daniel was escalating, fast. The next morning, Mara found paperwork slipped under the door of my room, a legal document demanding immediate transfer authorization. No signature from the hospital, no approval, just a threat disguised as formality. "He's unhinged," Mara hissed as she crumpled the paper. "He knows he's losing control, but that wasn't the end of it." 2 days later, at 2 a.m., the door to my room opened without a knock. Mara was off shift. A substitute nurse sat dozing in the corner, and into my room stepped Daniel. Alone, no Lily, no attorney, no fake politeness, just him and the kind of rage that chills the air. I felt my heartbeat spike so violently the machine beeped in alarm. He closed the door behind him quietly, too quietly. Then he walked to my bedside, staring down at me with the eyes of a man who'd lost everything and blamed me for all of it. "You ruined everything," he whispered. His voice was steady. That scared me more than if he had yelled. "You just had to survive, didn't you?" he said, leaning closer. Couldn't just die like you were supposed to. Terror flooded me so violently I felt my body strain against its paralysis. He noticed the flicker in my eyes and smiled. "Oh, you can hear me. Good." He reached for the ventilator tube, not yanking it, not pulling it, just touching it, testing how easily he could end me. "They think you're improving," he murmured, "but they have no idea how fragile you really are. One mistake, one malfunction, one slip." My pulse monitor shrieked. The substitute nurse jolted, awake, startled. Daniel straightened instantly, switching into performance mode. "Sorry," he said with a false sigh. She got startled. I must have spoken too loudly. The nurse glanced at him uncertainly, saw nothing overtly threatening, and sat back down. Daniel leaned close to my ear again. "No ethics board can protect you forever," he whispered, "and you will never wake up enough to stop me." He left the room before the nurse could notice the tremble in my eyelids. The moment the door shut, I felt myself spiraling, panic, rage, helplessness colliding like shattered glass in my chest. When Mara arrived for her morning shift, she found me trembling, my vitals spiking into dangerous territory. Hey, what happened?" she whispered, grabbing my hand. I blinked, hard, deliberately, over and over, trying to force the panic into a signal. When she saw the fear in my eyes, her expression darkened into something lethal. "He was here," she said under her breath. I knew it. I knew he'd try something. She placed both hands on my bed rail, leaning close. "Listen to me. I'm going to protect you. I don't care what it costs." And in that moment, I knew something new. Mara wasn't just a nurse. Mara had taken this personally, maybe too personally. And Daniel had no idea that the next time he tried to reach for me, he would find someone far more dangerous than I could ever be in this bed. He would find Mara. Mara didn't call security right away, and that told me everything I needed to know about how far she was willing to go. She wasn't acting like a nurse following protocol anymore. She was acting like someone who had chosen a side in a war she didn't start but fully intended to finish. She closed the blinds, locked the door, and lowered her voice to a whisper that trembled with fury. "He came last night, didn't he?" she asked. I blinked once. She breathed in sharply, her jaw tightening. "I swear to God, if I had been here." Her voice trailed off, and the silence between us felt heavy enough to crush bone. "All right," she murmured. "If he wants to play this game, then we're going to change the rules." She moved with purpose, pulling my chart, scribbling notes, adjusting my equipment. Every action deliberate, strategic. She wasn't just protecting me. She was setting traps. "I'm switching your room," she said finally. "Somewhere he won't expect. Somewhere only the neurologist and I have access to." My monitor beeped in confusion as she unhooked equipment and prepared for transfer. "Don't worry," she whispered. "This is temporary. Just until we figure out how deep his reach goes." Deep, deeper than she realized, because Daniel wasn't working alone anymore. Someone out there, a lawyer, an advisor, a shadow I couldn't yet see, was telling him exactly what strings to pull. Mara pushed my bed down a back hallway, usually used for infectious isolation patients. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your spine tighten. The fluorescent lights above flickered, as if reacting to the tension. She checked over her shoulder every few steps. "He can't know where you are," she murmured. "If he knew, he'd find another way to get in." Another way. The phrase made my pulse spike. Because Daniel was nothing if not persistent. He didn't need legal authority to hurt me. He just needed opportunity. But Mara wasn't giving him any. She wheeled me into a sealed research wing, empty, dimly lit, almost forgotten. "Perfect," she whispered. "Nobody comes here without clearance." She positioned my bed near the window, locking wheels, adjusting the monitors. "I'll move into this wing for my shifts," she said. "And when I'm not here, someone I trust will sit beside you the entire time." I blinked to signal gratitude, but she wasn't finished. She leaned in, voice low and steady. "You need to understand something," she said. "Daniel isn't trying to move you to care facilities. That's cover." Her eyes hardened. "He's trying to make you disappear." My blood felt cold in my veins. She continued. "If he can't kill you legally, he'll find another way. An accident, a malfunction, a transfer, something that can't be traced back to him." I wanted to scream. I wanted to warn her. I wanted to tell her that Daniel wasn't just desperate, he was unraveling. And unraveling men were capable of anything. But all I could do was blink. "I know," she whispered as if she could read my mind. "And I promise you, he won't get near you again." She left briefly to grab equipment, promising she'd be back within minutes. And I believed her. But destiny, fate, or cruel coincidence had different plans. Because the moment she stepped out, someone else stepped in, not Daniel, worse. Attorney Morgan. Her heels clicked sharply against the tile as she closed the door behind her. No guards, no escort, just her. And the look in her eyes told me she wasn't here to talk. She stood at the foot of my bed, hands clasped, expression cold as steel. "You're being moved," she said calmly. My monitor beeped in sharp protest. She continued. "Your husband is filing emergency injunctions. While those are pending, he has authority to recommend temporary facility transfer. My job is to ensure that transfer happens." I blinked rapidly, trying to signal distress. She did not react. "Don't misunderstand," she said. "I'm not here to harm you. I'm here to stabilize liability." Stabilize. The word tasted poisonous. If you stay in this hospital, chaos continues. If you are relocated, everything, and quiets. That was when she stepped closer, her voice lowering. "And if you wake up fully, your husband's career ends. His life ends. Everything he built ends." There it was, the truth. She wasn't protecting him because she cared. She was protecting him because he was valuable. A client worth shielding. A man with influence she benefited from. She looked down at me like evaluating an inconvenience. "You are a threat," she murmured. "Not because of what you can do, but because of what you know." My heartbeat surged so violently the machine nearly screamed. She reached for the power switch on the monitor, not to harm me, but to silence the alarms. "I'm not here to kill you," she said, "but I am here to isolate you until the courts decide your fate. You understand?" I blinked once. Hard. Her eyes narrowed. That wasn't agreement. She stepped closer, her voice a whisper dripping with menace. "You think survival is your victory. It isn't. Survival only prolongs the inevitable." Then, in a move that made every hair on my body freeze, she reached into her bag and pulled out a document. A transfer form, already signed by Daniel. "Once the judge approves this," she whispered, "you're gone." Footsteps echoed in the hall, heavy, fast. Morgan stiffened. The door burst open. Mara stood there, chest rising with fury, eyes blazing like wildfire. "Get away from her." Morgan smiled thinly. "I'm her legal counsel's representative." "I don't give a damn if you're the governor," Mara snapped. "Step away from my patient before I file misconduct, so severe the Bar Association has nightmares." Morgan moved slowly back, her expression calm, but her eyes sharp. "You won't stop this," she murmured. "This is bigger than you." Mara stepped forward. "So am I." Morgan slipped out the door with a final whisper. "Enjoy your time with her. It won't last." When the door closed, Mara ran to my side, gripping my hand. "I'm so sorry I left," she said, voice breaking. "But I'm here now, and nobody is taking you anywhere." I blinked, slow and steady. Trust, relief, rage. All of it tangled in that moment. Mara exhaled, steadied herself, and leaned close. "Listen carefully," she whispered. "If they're trying this hard to move you, it means we're close. Something is coming, something big." She swallowed hard. "And when it happens, you need to be ready, ready." I wasn't sure what she meant, but within hours, I understood. Because that night, long after the hospital fell quiet, a loud crash echoed down the hall, followed by shouts, voices I recognized. Daniel was back, and he wasn't alone. The moment I heard the crash echo through the research wing, every cell in my body tightened, as if bracing for an impact I could not dodge. The hallway lights flickered again, that same sickening pulse I had begun to associate with danger, like the building itself sensed him approaching. Mara froze, with her hand still wrapped around mine, her eyes widening, her breath caught between her ribs. She whispered one word under her breath, a word that carried more dread than any scream could. "Him." She moved fast, pulling the curtain, turning off my monitor alarms but not the equipment itself, creating the illusion of a dark, dormant room. She positioned herself near the door, shoulders squared, ready to block it with her own body if she had to. The footsteps drew closer, heavy, impatient, purposeful. I recognized the rhythm instantly. Daniel walked like a man who believed every floor should move out of his way. Tonight, though, there was something different in the sound. Rage, desperation, recklessness, a terrible combination. Mara mouthed to me, "Stay quiet," as if I had any other choice. The door handle shook violently. Once, twice. Then Daniel's voice tore through the room even though he was still on the other side. "Open the door, now." Mara didn't move. She didn't speak. She waited, her jaw clenched, her breath even. The door rattled harder, then came a pounding that reverberated through the thin walls, through my bones. "I know she is in there," he shouted. His voice cracked slightly on the last word, and the crack terrified me more than the anger. Cracks mean instability. Cracks mean unpredictability. Cracks mean someone is about to do something irreversible. Mara called out through the door, her tone deadly calm. "This wing is restricted. You are not authorized here." Daniel's laugh was short and soulless. "I am her husband. I am authorized everywhere she is." Mara didn't hesitate. "Not in this hospital. Not anymore." Silence. Then another crash, louder than before. Something slammed into the door hard enough that dust fell from the frame. Mara stepped back instinctively, then repositioned herself. She wasn't scared. She was calculating. "I could tell," she whispered. "He doesn't know the cameras here were disabled years ago. They won't catch what he's doing." Those words chilled me because she wasn't warning me. She was preparing me. Daniel struck the door again, this time with what sounded like his shoulder. His breath came in ragged bursts between hits. He was losing control, completely. I caught a glimpse of the shadow moving under the door, pacing, circling, hunting. Then another voice joined him. A woman's. A voice I recognized instantly. Attorney Morgan. Quiet, sharp, cutting through the tension like a knife dipped in poison. "Daniel, stop. If you force entry here, you lose leverage. You lose everything." Her tone was not compassion. It was irritation, annoyance. As if Daniel's unraveling state was an inconvenience, not a crisis. He snapped back at her, voice shaking. "I'm losing everything anyway if she wakes up. She has the power to end me." Morgan replied coldly, "Only if she speaks. Right now, she can't." That was when something inside me shifted. Not fear, not pain, something darker, something sharper. Something like resolve crystallizing. Because as much as I hated every word coming from the other side of that door, Morgan was right about one thing. As long as I couldn't speak, I lived at the mercy of the people who wanted me gone. Mara leaned close to me, whispering, "He's spiraling. He's making mistakes. That's good. That means we're close to exposing him." Another crash hit the door, but weaker this time. As if Daniel's energy was draining, but his desperation was growing. He shouted, "I know what you're trying to do. I know you moved her. Do you think I'm stupid?" Mara shouted back. "Do you think I'm afraid of you? I don't work for you. I don't answer to you, and I won't let you near her." Morgan intervened again, her voice ice cold. "Daniel, enough. If you break this door, I will not defend you in court." He hesitated. The pacing stopped. The shadow under the door stilled. For a moment, the silence was so thick it felt suffocating. Then Daniel spoke again, but quieter this time. More dangerous because of the calm. "She belongs with me. I decide what happens to her." Mara's eyes flashed with outrage. "She doesn't belong to anyone. She is my patient, and you are out of control." That must have pushed him past the edge, because suddenly the handle twisted so hard it squealed against the metal. The door burst open an inch before something yanked it back from the outside. Morgan again. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but I still heard the venom. "If you step through that door, you will lose everything you still have left." Daniel's breathing sounded like an animal backed into a corner. For a split second, I wondered if he would do it anyway. If he would storm in and end everything himself. But then the footsteps retreated. Not willingly, not peacefully, forced. Dragged by reason he no longer possessed. His voice echoed one last time, trembling with a promise that wasn't a threat but a certainty. "This isn't over." The hall fell silent again. Mara locked the door immediately, then leaned against it as if holding the world back with her own strength. She swallowed hard, wiped her forehead, and forced her voice into a steady tone. "We're running out of time." She turned toward me with a look I had never seen on her face. Not fear, not anger. Determination sharpened into something fierce. "We need proof," she whispered. "Proof he can never bury." And then she said something that sent a tremor through me. "I know someone who might help. Someone who hates what he's capable of as much as I do. Someone he will never see coming." She stepped back into the shadows of the room, pulled out her phone, and dialed a number with hands that trembled just enough for me to notice. When the call connected, her voice dropped to a tone filled with both urgency and something else. "Trust. It's me. I need you. And I need you now." Mara ended the call with a silence so heavy it made the air feel thicker, as if the hospital itself was holding its breath. She slipped the phone into her pocket and moved toward my bedside with steps that were too precise, too practiced, the steps of someone preparing for a storm she already tasted on the horizon. Her face was set in determination, but her eyes revealed something else. Fear, not of Daniel, not of Morgan, but of what was coming next. She leaned close, keeping her voice low even though we were alone in an abandoned research wing. "He's going to escalate," she whispered. "He's losing control faster than I expected. That means he's going to make mistakes. And mistakes mean truth." She touched my hand gently. "But we need more than truth. We need evidence that even his attorney can't bury." She paused again, as if weighing whether to tell me the next part, and then she did. "The person I called knows him. Knows what he did before you." My pulse jumped painfully. "Before me. Before what happened to you," she said, reading the look in my eyes as if they were open. "You weren't the first woman he tried to break. You're just the first one he thought he finished." The words hit me like a blow I couldn't dodge. Mara stood, exhaled shakily, and looked toward the door as if expecting the shadows to move. When she turned back, she continued in a whisper. "Listen carefully. If we get the proof we need, you won't just survive. You'll end him. Not physically, not violently, but in the only way that people like him understand. Power stripped, reputation destroyed, every secret exposed." I blinked slowly to show I understood, or maybe to show I wanted to understand. Truthfully, the edges of my world were beginning to blur. Fatigue, fear, adrenaline, they were all mixing into a fog. Mara noticed. She touched the side of my face with a gentle but steady hand. "Stay awake if you can. They're still somewhere in this building." She wasn't wrong, because a minute later, footsteps echoed again. Softer this time, controlled, calculated. Mara's entire body went tense. "Not Daniel," she whispered. "Someone else. Someone lighter. Someone with purpose." The steps grew closer, then stopped right outside the door. A soft knock followed. 3 slow taps. Not impatient, not angry, just certain. Mara moved forward, one hand on the door handle, the other subtly reaching toward the emergency call button she could press if she needed backup. "Who is it?" she asked. A woman's voice answered, calm, even, familiar in a way I couldn't place. "It's me. You called." Mara opened the door only halfway, her body blocking the entrance. "Come in fast before someone sees you." The woman stepped inside swiftly, and Mara shut the door behind her without hesitation. She was tall, sharply dressed, with a confidence that radiated even in the dim light. Her hair pulled into a sleek twist, her eyes cold but intelligent. She moved with the energy of someone who'd spent years learning how to enter rooms without leaving a trace. When she looked at me, her expression softened but only slightly. "So this is her," she said. Mara nodded. "This is her." The woman stepped closer to my bed. I recognized her then, not her name, but her aura, because she carried the same kind of controlled fury that Mara had, except hers was older, deeper, sharper. "My name is Sinclair," she said quietly. "I used to be married to him." My body tensed so violently, my monitor beeped. Sinclair didn't flinch. She just nodded slowly, as if she expected that reaction. "Yes, Daniel destroyed my life long before he tried to erase yours. Her voice was steady, but underneath it simmered a pain so controlled it was almost weaponized. He isolated me, manipulated doctors, lawyers, even my own family. And when I found out the truth, he made sure I couldn't speak it. Mara stepped forward. "That's why I called you. She deserves to know she's not alone." Sinclair nodded once. "And she deserves justice." She turned back to me, her voice lowering even more. "I know you can hear every word, so listen closely. Daniel is not acting alone. He never does. He has allies in places that should terrify you, but none of them are loyal. They're useful to him only as long as he's rising. And right now, he's falling. Fast." Mara moved to my other side. Sinclair continued. "When a man like him falls, the people who once protected him start running. They start selling him out. They start turning on him before he can turn on them. I have access to people who will talk, people who will testify, people who will give us what we need," Mara added. "And once we have enough evidence, we're going to court. And we will make sure the judge sees exactly what he tried to do." Sinclair looked at Mara. "How long do we have before he tries again?" Mara shook her head. "Hours, maybe less." Then Sinclair leaned closer to me, her voice dropping to a whisper meant only for me. "But you're not going anywhere. Not until we finish this. Not until you get your life back. Not until he loses everything he stole from you." I blinked once. Hard. Agreement. Acceptance. Maybe even hunger for the justice being promised. Sinclair straightened, her tone shifting back into the sharpness of strategy. "First step. We need to document everything. Every change in your vitals. Every unauthorized attempt he made to access your room. Every conversation overheard. Every legal threat Morgan issued." Mara nodded. "I've already started. I have timestamps, security logs, and witness statements from staff who saw him here last night." Sinclair smirked. "Good, because when the time comes, I'll make sure he never sees this coming." She turned to leave but stopped at the door. Her final words rippled through the room with the force of a storm. "He thinks you're helpless. He thinks silence protects him. He thinks no one will ever fight for you. But he has no idea what kind of war he just started." Sinclair slipped out of the room with the same silent precision she entered, leaving behind a charged stillness that made the walls feel tighter, the air heavier, and the night far from over. Mara locked the door again, double-checked the blinds, and sat beside me with her back straight and her senses sharpened like she expected danger to crawl out of the vents. She didn't speak for several seconds, as if processing everything Sinclair had brought into the room, every revelation that had shifted the battle from panic to strategy. Finally, she exhaled. "She's the only person he fears," she whispered. "And fear makes him sloppy, a small comfort, but comfort nonetheless." She adjusted my pillow gently, then typed rapidly on her tablet, her fingers tapping like a telegraph sending out warnings. She was building a record, a timeline, a blueprint of everything Daniel had done. Evidence he couldn't erase, evidence that would bury him. But the moment gave me no peace, because only minutes later the hallway lights flickered again, twice this time, longer than before, like a heartbeat skipping rhythm. Mara stiffened. "That's not normal." She went to the door, listening. Voices floated down the hall, distant at first, then clearer. The tone was sharp, controlled, rehearsed. Morgan. Of course she hadn't left the hospital. Of course she was still playing puppet master. But this time she wasn't arguing with Daniel. She was speaking to someone else. Someone with authority. I could make out the words through the small gap under the door. Unauthorized wing. Legal liability. Transfer approved. Immediate action. Mara's eyes widened in horror. "She's trying to fast-track your relocation." She turned toward my bed with panic creeping into her expression. Something I'd never seen from her before. "I need to stall her. I need to buy time until Sinclair gets what she needs." She grabbed her badge, straightened her scrubs, and cracked the door open just enough to slip out. As soon as she left, the room felt emptier and colder, like my safety had walked out with her. Her voice carried down the hall, calm but firm. "You can't move her tonight. There's no clearance." Morgan replied with a venomous sweetness that made my stomach twist. "I have court approval. You can check it if you want." Mara shot back. "I want confirmation from the attending." "He isn't here," Morgan snapped. "Then the transfer waits," Mara said. Their footsteps grew sharper, their voices angrier, their words less careful, and then silence. A silence too sudden, too clean. Something was wrong. Before I could process it, a different sound came from the opposite side of the ward. Not footsteps, not voices. A metallic click. Someone unlocking the emergency stairwell door. My heart spiked. That door wasn't supposed to be used at night, and it definitely wasn't supposed to be used now. A moment later, a figure stepped into the dark hallway outside my room. Not Morgan, not Mara, not Sinclair, a hospital orderly. At least, that's what the uniform suggested. But something was off. The uniform was too large, the posture too stiff, the movements too deliberate. He approached my door quietly, pushing a rolling stretcher beside him. My blood turned to ice. He wasn't here for a routine task. He wasn't even pretending this was normal. He paused at the door to my room, pressing his ear to it, listening, gathering information. I tried to slow my breathing, but my monitor betrayed me, the soft beeps quickening. He froze, heard it, reacted, then reached for the handle. I wanted to scream, wanted to thrash, wanted to call for Mara. But I was trapped in my body, a prisoner in my own skin. He turned the handle. The latch clicked, and the door began to open. But before it could swing wide, a sharp voice exploded down the hall. "Step away from that door." It was Sinclair. She moved toward him with the confidence of someone unafraid to confront darkness head-on. The orderly straightened but didn't back away. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing into slits. "You're not on the schedule. You're not assigned to this wing. And you're not here for her." His jaw tightened. Sinclair leaned in, her voice dropping to a cutting whisper. "So let me say this in a way you will understand. If you touch that door again, you won't just lose your job. You will lose every connection Daniel promised you." Her words hit their mark. The man hesitated, looked at the stretcher, then back at her. She didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't give him room to breathe. Slowly, reluctantly, he backed away, not defeated, but postponed. Sinclair watched him retreat until he disappeared back into the stairwell. She waited, counting silent seconds, making sure he didn't return. Then she slipped into my room and shut the door behind her with a quiet finality. "You're not safe here anymore," she said. "Not even with Mara. Not with staff around. Not with cameras. Not with protocols. Not with anything except strategy." My pulse hammered in agreement. Sinclair stepped closer. "Mara is stalling Morgan as long as she can, but the legal order will go through. The judge Morgan contacted is one of Daniel's old donors. That's why they're pushing so hard tonight." I blinked rapidly, panic rising. She placed a hand gently on my arm. "I know. And that's why we're going to do something they'll never anticipate." She reached into her coat and pulled out a black device no larger than a matchbox. A recorder. The same kind that corporate investigators used when gathering evidence that needed to be undeniable. When she spoke again, her voice held a dangerous calm. "When Daniel comes back, and he will, he's going to incriminate himself. And this time, you're going to be the one to capture it." I blinked hard, questioning how that was possible. She answered before I could ask. "He thinks you're helpless. That's his weakness. And now, it's our weapon." Sinclair placed the recorder under my pillow with movements so precise they felt rehearsed, as if she had done this 100 times for people who didn't survive long enough to thank her. She fixed the blanket, smoothing it so nothing looked disturbed. Then she leaned close enough that I could feel the faint warmth of her breath. "He will come here tonight," she whispered. "Either by choice or by fear. People like Daniel always return to the scene of control. He needs to confirm his power. And that is exactly when he slips." The lights flickered again, this time longer, as if the hospital itself sensed the storm gathering inside its walls. Sinclair glanced up, annoyed. "Power interference is too coincidental. Morgan is involved." She moved toward the door, but paused before leaving. "Keep your breathing steady, your heartbeat too. He cannot suspect you're aware. Not yet." She closed the door softly behind her, leaving me once again in the dim room where danger lurked in every shadow. Minutes passed. Maybe an hour. maybe less. Time warped in those moments, stretching and folding like fear-bending reality. My monitor beeped steadily, but I felt my pulse thudding harder in my chest with every distant footstep in the corridor. Then the hallway fell silent, unnaturally silent, the kind of silence that wraps itself around your throat. The door handle turned. Slowly, deliberately, Daniel stepped inside. He didn't look like the shattered man Sinclair described. He looked energized, like someone who had finally made a decision so cruel it gave him momentum. His hair was damp from the rain, his suit rumpled, his tie slung loosely around his neck, as if he had poured whiskey over his guilt and called it courage. He closed the door behind him and exhaled sharply, his composure cracking in the dim light. Then he walked to my bed and stared at me. For a long, uncomfortable stretch, he said nothing. He just watched me the way someone watches a locked safe they believe contains their future. Finally, he spoke. "I can't keep doing this." His voice wavered, but not with sadness, with frustration, with resentment, with the exhaustion of a man whose lies were running out of road. He rubbed his face with both hands. "I didn't want it to end like this. You weren't supposed to survive." The words hung heavy in the room. Even though I knew the truth, hearing it spoken aloud hit me like ice water. My heart monitor spiked. Daniel leaned closer, misinterpreting the change. "Oh, come on," he muttered. "Not now. Don't start this again. You're barely conscious. You don't even know I'm here." Or so he believed. He paced to the foot of my bed, running a hand through his hair. "Morgan says we need to finish this tonight. She's right. The legal order will go through. The transfer is arranged. After that, nobody will question a thing." He stepped back to my side, but he wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking past me, past the woman I was, past the life we shared. He spoke to the idea of me, the burden of me, the version of me he no longer wanted. "You were supposed to fade away quietly, not drag this out, not make everything so damn complicated." He sighed and lowered his voice. "This is the only way I get to keep my company, my future, everything I built." There it was. The confession he never should have spoken. The recorder caught every syllable, but he wasn't done. He leaned down until his face hovered inches above mine. "If you could hear me," he whispered, "it would almost be cruel, but you can't. So I'll say this out loud, just so someone does. I didn't leave you in that hospital because I stopped loving you. I left because you were in the way. And I am done sacrificing my life because you can't keep yours together." My pulse spiked again. He noticed and grabbed the sides of my bed like he owned even my heartbeat. "You see?" he hissed. "This is what I mean. You can't even die properly." The door clicked, soft, almost imperceptible. Daniel froze. Not because he heard it, but because he sensed something shift in the air, a presence. Sinclair slid into the room like a shadow with purpose. Daniel straightened instantly, adjusting his posture, smoothing his shirt, forcing composure onto his features like wet plaster over cracked stone. Sinclair smiled faintly, a smile with no warmth at all. "Working late, Daniel?" Her voice held polite curiosity, but the razor edge beneath it made the hairs on my arms prickle. Daniel stepped back from my bed, forcing a laugh, just checking on her, making sure she's comfortable. Sinclair glanced at my monitor, then at the untouched water on the tray, then at the subtle wrinkle in my blanket. Observant, calculating, dangerous. "You've had a long night," she said softly. "And you're about to have a longer one." Daniel frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" She stepped closer, invading his space so subtly that he didn't even realize he was retreating. "It means," she whispered, "that I've been listening to everything." The color drained from his face. He glanced toward my pillow instinctively, revealing he sensed a threat before understanding it. Sinclair caught the movement. "Good. You know exactly what I'm talking about." Daniel stammered. "I don't know what." She cut him off. "The recorder is running, Daniel. And you've said enough tonight to bury yourself twice." His breath hitched. For a moment, he shifted from arrogance to raw panic. "You can't do this. You don't know who you're dealing with." Sinclair stepped even closer. "Oh, but I do. Because you're exactly like every executive I've dismantled. You think you're untouchable. You think no one notices the bodies you step over. But someone always does. And this time, that someone is me." Daniel took a shaky breath and looked at me, not with fear of hurting me, but fear of losing everything he built, fear of consequences, fear of exposure. Sinclair's voice lowered to a tone that felt like a verdict being delivered. "This ends tonight." Daniel stepped back, as if Sinclair's words had physically struck him, his confidence cracking like thin glass under pressure. His throat bobbed, his jaw clenched, and the twitch in his left eye betrayed the panic he tried so hard to hide. He glanced toward the door, as if calculating the distance, as if wondering whether he could storm past Sinclair and escape before consequences caught up with him. She noticed. She moved her body an inch to the right, effortlessly blocking the doorway. "Don't even think about it," she said softly. "People are in the hall, and none of them are on your side." Daniel's breath sped up. "You're bluffing. You don't have anything. You're trying to scare me." Sinclair tilted her head, smiling like a predator amused by prey that still believed it had options. "Am I?" She reached into her coat. Daniel tensed, expecting a weapon. Instead, she pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. His voice filled the room, instantly cold, calculating, merciless. "I didn't want it to end like this. You weren't supposed to survive. And then the second part, even worse. You were in the way. I'm done sacrificing my life because you can't keep yours together." Daniel lunged for the phone, but Sinclair slipped it behind her back with a casual ease that humiliated him more than a slap to the face. Her voice dropped. "Medical proxy abuse. Attempted endangerment. Coordinated transfer without legal grounds. Coercion of medical staff, intent to accelerate death. And that's not even including the financial crimes waiting to crawl out from under the rock you're standing on." Daniel paled completely now. "You can't prove anything." That recorder, Sinclair cut him off with a whisper that felt like a blade sliding under skin. "Do you honestly think this is the only recording running right now?" The room felt colder. My monitor beeped faster. Daniel's head swiveled toward me sharply. You heard all this? You've been awake? Conscious?" My eyelids didn't move. My face remained still. But my pulse, my heartbeat told the truth. He was too unhinged not to notice. His breath hitched as realization hit him like a punch to the ribs. "Dear God," he whispered. "What did you tell her?" Sinclair stepped closer. "Everything." She leaned over the bed rail, her voice lower than I'd ever heard it, and she spelled it letter by letter. Daniel stumbled backward, shaking his head violently. No, she couldn't. She's barely functioning. She's Sinclair finished for him. Smarter than you, stronger than you, and much harder to kill than you expected. The fury in Daniel's eyes ignited like a match. He wasn't scared now, he was cornered. And cornered men did dangerous things. His fist clenched, his breathing sharpened. He took one step toward me. Sinclair moved first. She grabbed his wrist so fast he didn't see her hand until it was already locked around him like steel. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't even breathe in her direction unless I say so," Daniel snarled. "You think you can stop me? I built everything she has, everything she is. She would be nothing without me." Sinclair's smile turned lethal. "And that," she said, "is exactly why you're going to lose everything tonight." The door burst open. Mara stood there breathless, sweating, eyes wild but not alone. 2 hospital administrators, a security officer, and a woman in a dark pantsuit with a federal badge stepped in behind her. Daniel froze. The federal agent stepped forward. "Daniel Hayes?" He stiffened. His voice trembled. "Yes?" She raised her badge. "Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Medical Crimes. We need to speak with you regarding allegations of attempted proxy abuse, financial coercion, and interference with patient care." Daniel's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The agent continued. "You're required to accompany us immediately." Daniel shook his head. "You can't. You don't understand. This is all a manipulation. She's not even conscious." The agent looked at Sinclair, then at my monitor, then at Daniel. "Actually, we understand perfectly." Daniel shot a desperate look at me, searching for a sign of weakness to exploit. Then a more desperate look at Mara. Then at Sinclair, whose expression told him she was already 3 steps ahead of every excuse he could invent. The agent nodded to the security officer. "Take him." Daniel backed up with both hands raised. No, wait, listen, you're making a mistake." Everything you think you know, it's wrong. You don't know what she did. You don't know what security moved toward him. Daniel panicked. He lunged for me, maybe for the pillow, maybe for the recorder, maybe for one last chance to destroy the evidence before it destroyed him. But Sinclair slammed her shoulder into him, pinning him against the wall so hard the impact shook the medical equipment. "Do not touch her," Sinclair hissed. "Do not look at her. Do not think about her again." Security cuffed him. His breath came out in ragged gasps as fear finally replaced arrogance. He looked around the room as if every face there had betrayed him. He tried one last time. "This is a setup. You're all falling for a setup. I loved her. I stood by her. She's manipulating you. She's..." Mara cut him off with a whisper so soft it cut like a knife. "She never lied. You did." Daniel's face twisted, fury and panic swallowing each other like two beasts fighting in the dark. As they dragged him out, he screamed, "You'll regret this. All of you. I'll ruin you. I'll ruin." The door slammed. Silence washed over the room like a wave. Sinclair looked at me. Her voice softened for the first time. "It's over. Not legally, not fully, but the part where he decides your fate? That ended tonight." Mara moved to my bedside, shaking, tears trembling in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered. "You held on long enough. You fought when nobody knew you could fight. And now, you're safe." For the first time in what felt like forever, I believed her. The door clicked shut behind Daniel, and for the first time since the night I collapsed at home, the air in the room felt breathable, not warm, not comforting, but breathable. Mara's hand rested lightly on my arm, her touch steady, even though her shoulders still trembled from adrenaline. Sinclair stood near the window, her silhouette sharp against the glow of the city outside, as if she were guarding the room, even now that the threat had been dragged away in handcuffs. None of us spoke for a long time. Silence settled around us, not the suffocating kind that had kept me prisoner for months, but the kind that lets wounds finally exhale. When Sinclair finally stepped toward my bed, her voice softened in a way I wasn't prepared for. "He won't touch you again. He won't decide for you again. The law will take him from here." I blinked slowly, once, letting her see gratitude I could not voice aloud. She placed something on the tray beside me, a black flash drive. "This is every recording I made. Yours, mine, Morgan's calls, Daniel's attempts to pressure hospital staff. It's airtight, and it belongs to you." My pulse steadied. For the first time, I felt control returning to me, not in my limbs, not in my voice, but in the sense that my future was no longer tied to his choices. Mara exhaled shakily. "We'll transfer you to a secure recovery facility tonight. Not the one Morgan chose, one Sinclair arranged. They have a team who specializes in neurological recovery. You'll be safe there." She paused, her voice thickening. "And we'll make sure the world knows exactly what he tried to do." My heartbeat jumped with something new. Not fear, not anger, but possibility. For months, my existence had been reduced to blinking for survival. Now, for the first time, the horizon stretched in front of me. Weeks passed, then months. The secure recovery center was nothing like the cold, fluorescent cage I had been trapped in before. The walls were warm earth tones. The staff spoke to me like I existed, like I mattered. I worked with a neurologist who believed in my recovery with a conviction that made me believe too. Every day I fought my own body. Every day it resisted. Every day I pushed anyway. First I regained control of my eyelids, then tiny movements in my fingers, then my hand, then my right leg. Pain was constant. Exhaustion hovered like a shadow. But after everything Daniel tried to steal from me, my life, my autonomy, my voice, every inch of progress felt like a victory carved out of his failure. Sinclair visited often. Mara came even more. They were the first faces I grew used to seeing as someone awakening from darkness, not someone sinking into it. And slowly, painfully, I learned to speak again. My voice was raspy at first, breaking like cracked glass. But it was mine. My words, my power. The first full sentence I managed, 2 months into therapy, was simple. "I'm not done." Mara cried when she heard it. Sinclair didn't cry, but she looked prouder than anyone had ever looked at me in my life. Daniel's trial came a year later. By then, I could walk with a cane. I could move without assistance. I could speak clearly enough to testify. Prosecutors built the entire case around the recordings, around the hospital logs, around the financial documents Sinclair uncovered. Morgan turned on Daniel in exchange for a lighter sentence, spilling every detail of the plan she and Daniel had crafted. The courtroom was packed the day I testified. Reporters, lawyers, strangers who had followed the case. But the only eyes I cared about were his. Daniel looked older, smaller, his arrogance hollowed out. The suit he wore didn't give him the power he once wielded effortlessly. When I walked to the stand, cane in hand, the room went silent. His mouth dropped open, not in remorse, not in apology, but in disbelief that I had survived enough to stand before him. I looked him dead in the eyes as I gave my testimony. I recounted every word he'd spoken over my bed, every decision he made, every betrayal, every moment he believed I was too broken to fight back. My voice shook only once when I said the words he whispered the night he thought I was gone. You were in the way. When the recording of his confession played, he crumbled. The verdict was swift, guilty, on every charge. He was sentenced to decades in federal custody, no possibility of parole for at least 30 years. As they led him away, he looked back at me one last time. His eyes begged, pleaded, apologized, lied. I stared back without blinking, without shaking, without giving him the dignity of a reaction. That chapter of my life closed the moment the doors locked behind him. 3 years after the night he abandoned me in that hospital, I walked into the headquarters of his company, but not as the broken woman he left behind. I walked in as the majority shareholder, the new owner, the woman who bought the very empire he tried to kill me to protect. Employees whispered as I entered the executive boardroom. Some recognized me, some only knew the headlines, but all of them watched as Daniel's replacement CEO, a man handpicked by his desperate final months, scrambled to stand. I didn't let him finish his greeting. You're all dismissed, I said. Accept him. He stayed. I sat across from him, steadying my hands on my cane. You have 2 options, I told him. Resign quietly, or be removed loudly. He resigned within 60 seconds. And just like that, the kingdom Daniel built became mine. I didn't take it out of greed. I took it because he believed it would never belong to me. I took it because he thought I would die before touching the life he built. I took it because survival itself wasn't enough. I wanted my victory to eclipse his legacy. And it did. I walked out of the building that afternoon, feeling lighter than I had in years. The sun hit my face. The breeze carried the warmth of spring. I was alive. I was free. I was stronger than the man who tried to bury me. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a survivor. I felt like someone reborn. My past didn't define me. His choices didn't define me. My recovery, my fight, my will, those defined me. I went home that night to a small house near the coast, far from the chaos, far from the darkness. And as I stood on the porch watching the waves, I whispered the words I had wanted to say for so long. I'm here, I'm still here, and I won.